Believe it or not, drone technology's been around in one form or another for more than 100 years. The first pilotless aircraft took flight in 1907, but had severe limitations. It could only lift 2 feet off the ground and was completely unsteerable. The drones of today, however, are an entirely different animal. Modern-day drones can be used in a multitude of settings and are often equipped with artificial intelligence that allow for minimal pilot training.
Drones are used in a wide variety of applications already. Basically, any type of mission in which it would be useful to have an aerial view is a mission that a drone can do today. And that's everything from aerial photography to firefighting, as well as search and rescue, agriculture, facility inspection, accident photography for purposes of reconstruction and liability. Basically, it's like placing a sensor or camera in three-dimensional space and taking advantage of that point of view.
That's Brendan Schulman, Vice President of Policy and Legal Affairs at DJI, a drone manufacturing company. Schulman says in recent years, there's been a huge increase in the number of people interested in these radio-controlled aircrafts.
It's still true that most drones today are used for recreational purposes, people who are enjoying aerial photography, typically of landscapes or perhaps their own family events. But the commercial use is rapidly growing, especially since the implementation in 2016 of the FAA's basic set of rules for commercial operations. So we've seen what started off as being a recreational type of technology blossom into commercial applications.
Whether it's private or commercial drone use, the government is cracking down on this fast-evolving technology. Unlike cars, which have license plates for identification, there's currently no such requirement for in-flight drones. The aircraft could hover over your private backyard or outside your high-rise balcony, or it could even crash into your windshield, and you'd be left with no way of identifying its operator. The Federal Aviation Administration is hoping to change this through new legislation mandating that all operators provide real-time remote identification.
So essentially, remote ID is identification like a license plate, but it's remote. It's something that can be done indirectly or through a radio broadcast or other data transmission. And that's not currently required. The industry and the FAA have been talking about remote ID for at least 3 years now, try to figure out on both a technical level as well as a policy level how to achieve that functionality, which is viewed as being important for accountability, safety, as well as security.
Remote identification technology would mean that each drone would have its own version of a digital license plate, so it could be recognized in real time while in flight. That would allow the FAA, law enforcement, and other agencies to quickly track down the operator of a drone that appears to be flying dangerously or in a restricted airspace. Currently, any drone weighing over 0.55 pounds must be registered with the FAA, and today 1.3 million drones have been registered in their database. However, few are equipped with remote ID. So, what will it take to switch over to this new technology?
How you do remote ID is obviously very significant because those are things that are not required today, and so those are costs or burdens that need to be undertaken by all the people doing productive and in some cases life-saving operations today. In fact, we have counted over 320 people who've been rescued by drones in life-threatening situations and other peril, including missing persons, flooding, and avalanches and things like that. So the question and the most pertinent issue is how will people like that and everyone need to do remote ID, and what will it cost and take?
One of the proposals for implementing remote ID is to broadcast a radio signal to a specific frequency. The other method would require drones to be connected to the internet through a service supplier. From there, finding the identity of a drone could be similar to using the constellation app Stargazer, where you point your cell phone at the sky and the app identifies the planet or star on your screen. In this scenario, you could point your phone at a drone hovering overhead, and the aircraft's identification number would appear on your screen, as well as the GPS location of its operator. However, this new mandate, as well as current prohibitive regulations, are facing opposition from both private and commercial users alike.
The regulations as they currently stand prohibit flying beyond the line of sight of the operator, flying at night, flying over people, flying above 400 feet. And so although you can obtain exemptions to these rules, they put a lot of constraints on some more complex commercial activities that some businesses would like to use drones for, such as inspecting pipelines or other types of infrastructure, and of course conducting drone deliveries. And these types of operations require not only long distance flights, but flights over businesses, over people and cars and things that are currently prohibited under the FAA regulations.
That's Dan Gettinger, co-director of the Center for the Study of the Drone at Bard College. He says drones play an important role in public emergencies, and that's when exemptions to current FAA regulations come into play. Over 1,500 public agencies in the U.S. operate drones, and during a crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic, this tech can be extremely helpful.
A common use that we've seen for drones in the midst of this crisis, which is communicating to the public. And, that could be flying a drone over, a public space like a beach or a public square and using the drone's loudspeaker to tell people to go home, or flying up to a group of people and telling them they have to disperse. Some drones are able to be equipped with a loudspeaker, and that's not uncommon among public safety agencies in the U.S. that have drones, to see drones equipped with loudspeakers. I think what's unique in this sort of situation is seeing drones being used in that way outside of a sort of tactical situation in which drones are more commonly used.
California is one state that reportedly considered this option as young people continued to flock to its beaches. Countries like Indonesia and South Korea also deployed drones to spray disinfectant on playgrounds and public plazas to limit the spread of the virus. However, while the technology has many practical uses for the world, drones still make some people nervous. Municipalities across the country, from the city of Chicago to small towns like Prairie Village, Kansas, have already adopted ordinances to prohibit the operation of recreational drones within city limits. These places cite health, safety, and privacy concerns, even though the airspace is controlled by the FAA, not local municipalities. But experts like Gettinger say drones, like any other technology, have the potential to be misused.
There have been cases involving peeping toms and drones, so there's absolutely potential for people to abuse this technology.
The federal government has also cited national security concerns over the use of private drones.
There have been a number of proposals, whether from the administration or elsewhere, to restrict the use or purchase of drones specifically that are either made in or contain components made in China. And the pretext for those policies and proposals has been cybersecurity allegations that drones, in particular the ones we sell and make, are somehow sending data to China. We have done a lot to show that's totally untrue, starting with the fact that when you take a picture with our drone, it doesn't automatically go anywhere. We don't have a business in your data. So we don't automatically collect the images or video or flight path information of what you're doing with the drone. We frankly don't care about it.
Nonetheless, the Department of the Interior grounded their entire fleet of drones for this reason. But Schulman suggests these restrictions have more to do with trade policies rather than national security.
I think we're at a moment where we're seeing broad adoption in sort of the commercial space. We're a couple of years into that, but people are really figuring out how to scale drones in their enterprise. Major organizations are doing that. I think we're going to be sort of in the present era for a while, which is to say drones operating within visual line of sight, which means drones that can operate as far as you can see them when you're flying them. I know there's an expectation or a vision that drones will one day be able to fly sort of unlimited distance beyond visual line of sight, deliver packages miles away, and to do all that at scale. That's great, but we have a lot of work to do in the industry as well as government to create the rules for doing that safely, because you don't want to hit another aircraft miles away. Therefore, you need both rules and technology to avoid the collision and those are still being researched.
Suffice it to say, you won't see drones buzzing around delivering packages to your door anytime soon, like Amazon once proposed. But if you're on a beach or in a shut-down public park during this pandemic, you might see one hovering overhead, telling you to go home. You can learn more about Brendan Schulman, Dan Gettinger, and all of our guests by visiting our website at viewpointsradio.org. For more behind the scenes, follow Viewpoints Radio on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. This segment was written and produced by Polly Hansen and Amira Zaveri. I'm Gary Price.
Americans are taking sheltering in place seriously. During the week ending March 15th, when social distancing first started to take hold, produce sales were up 40%, and potato sales were up more than 72%. Columnist Produce by Pamela says that's because people are filling pantries for the long haul. Frank Muir is president and CEO of the Idaho Potato Commission.
Potatoes have a long shelf life, but as with any produce, it's dependent upon how they're stored. Potatoes should be stored in a cool, dark, dry place, but not in the refrigerator. The cold converts the starch to sugar, which creates a sweet flavor. Also, don't wash your potatoes before storing them, and don't store them near onions. Finally, if your potatoes sprout, that's okay. Just pick the sprouts off and your potatoes will be ready whenever you need them.
Staying in also means you'll need to cook with ingredients you already have on hand. You'll find recipes with that in mind at idahopotato.com. That's idahopotato.com.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.
Coming up on Viewpoints.
We're looking at a possibility of 1 billion climate refugees by mid-century.
The next looming global crisis. Then,
we look at housing today, and it's a nightmare. Homelessness is increasing around the country. I think a quarter of tenants spend more than half their income on rent.
A deep dive into the housing crisis plaguing America's landscapes. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.